Well, hello folks, and welcome to another playthrough. And this one's kind of a special one. I have a strange fondness for this game, Jaws on the NES. And again, just looking at the actual audio, the audio was mixed way too low in the mix from the game here, which is kind of disappointing. And if it looks a bit strange that I've got a text file on the right here, that is the walkthrough for this game that I wrote when I was probably about 12 or 13 years old. So I'll try and slowly scroll through that throughout the video just to give a little bit extra flavour on the side there. So yeah, this is Jaws the video game, released in I think was it 1989? I'd have to double check that to know for sure. But it's obviously a game based on the titular film about the great white shark which stalks the residents of Amity Island. Massive film. It was 75, I think, 75 or 78. Jaws came out. I'll actually just double check that right now just to know for sure. Jaws the film was 1975. It came out. It was obviously one of Steven Spielberg's biggest breakthroughs. It's a well-loved film even to this day, and I would still say, despite what it says in the text on the right-hand side there from my little 12-year-old mind, I would still say it's a classic movie and still holds up today. Especially the way that they couldn't use the practical effects the way they wanted to, or use the special effects, so had to rely on the practical, um, or had to rely on sort of hiding the monster rather than showing it, which kind of added to its allure. So, like most kind of movie-based games of this kind of era, it's fairly simplistic. The kind of goal of the game, and I'll just scroll through this first section that I have here, is to basically kill Jaws by collecting these seashells, which allow you to increase your power level. And then when you have enough power, you will eventually be able to whittle down. I mean, you can see how little damage I'm doing to Jaws there as I shoot him. Of course, probably drawn to a more realistic scale than the film, although it's hard to say. I think he's known as a 20-footer in the movies, and a real life great white shark only probably gets up to about 12 or 15 feet. So there was a little bit of artistic license used there in Jaws. This film's sort of more based around the 19 Jaws the Revenge. When did that come out? 84, I would probably imagine. 87, Jaws the Revenge came out, so just a couple of years before the game. And Jaws the Revenge is probably the least liked of the Jaws movies. It is kind of cheesy by that point. It was just relying on a bit of a sequelitis. And Michael Caine famously said that he hadn't seen the movie. He, of course, starred in the film. He hadn't seen the movie, but he had seen the house that the movie built, and it was wonderful. There's also the Universal theme parks ride in Orlando, Florida, where you could ride on the Jaws ride, but I think that has since been discontinued. So we get our first bonus scene here. These are incredibly difficult to hit. One of the retro achievements, there's a website called Retro Achievements that allows you to unlock achievements through emulators with these old games. One of the retro achievements is actually for completing this bonus stage, flawlessly hitting every jellyfish, which I would think is kind of absurd and impossible. Let's scroll down a bit more to for the purposes of the walkthrough. You basically, as it says in my little guide on the right hand side there, you want to swim between these two ports that you'll see me swimming. Well, swim between is the wrong word. Sail between these two ports and use your shells to upgrade your power level, which will allow you to do more damage when you eventually get into a hit with Jaws. I actually get 17. I don't get a single hit there for this section. 17 hits on the bonus stage isn't actually that bad. I think the total's 25. There's 5 waves of 5 jellyfish, and it is absurdly difficult to try and get them all. And obviously, if you get a certain amount of hits, you get more bonus shells, which allow you to speed up this process of upgrading your power level. You now get the transceiver, so you can track Jaws. That seems to help you avoid hitting him, although you still get these basically random encounters, which give you a chance to farm up some shells and some crabs and starfish, which I think just basically give you additional points. As you'll see there, I didn't actually get any points, I think, for picking up that starfish, or that crab, not the same way the starfish points flash up. And even though it is a random encounter, sooner or later Jaws just swims in, and it becomes this kind of oddly satisfying but kind of slightly weird grind where you're just kind of dodging past Jaws, taking the opportunity to farm up any shells. And sad to say, like that is pretty much the whole gameplay loop here. It does get a little bit more complex. Jellyfish later on that move side to side rather than swimming straight up, and I don't think we've seen it up to this stage in the video, but you will occasionally get little baby sharks. There's a reference for you, which will always drop a shell, that's guaranteed, so that comes in handy. There are, I think, 9 power levels to get to in Jaws. Basically the same each time, it's just the amount of shells that you need to get to the next upgrade becomes more as the game moves on. Let's just scroll a bit further down in that walkthrough there to the pretty much the end. It's kind of, I remember sort of thinking, oh, I just wanted to get into the process of writing walkthroughs to get them put on game FAQs, and this just seemed to be a nice simple game that no one else seemed to have covered. So I was like, oh, I'll just spend an afternoon playing this. And obviously, although I do say in the text file that I didn't like Jaws, I can't actually think what I was thinking when I wrote that. Because even now, I would say it's probably certainly one of the best films of the 70s. Less said about the various sequels, the better. Jaws 2 was okay. Jaws 3D was a bit off the rails, and then Jaws the Revenge just got ridiculous. People famously made fun of things like the shark roaring with a Tyrannosaurus Rex sound effect when it jumped out of the ocean near the end. You busting my boogie, Michael. That's the one line that I actually remember. The where was it set? I think it was set in the West Indies, and there was like a West Indian character that eventually gets eaten by the shark. One of the deaths it takes. So yeah, at this point you're just kind of just trying to grind up as many shells as you can. You're not too worried about doing too much damage. And you can see it unlock an achievement there, Shell Collector, which must be for collecting 25 shells, because there was one for every sort of 25 level increment. So this was basically the first time I'd played through it with the achievements on, maybe completely at all. Did do a couple of run throughs for it before I sort of settled on the run through that I would use to make the video. But yeah, it turned out to be good fun. I mean, it's a simple game, this Jaws on the NES, but especially when you have such a fondness for the film and the franchise, really, to some extent, it's a nice little game you can play through. And there's a speed record on YouTube. Someone beats the game in something like 3.5 minutes. I wasn't quite able to do it that quickly. I kind of went more for farming the achievements here, I suppose, trying to get as many shells as I could, and trying to reach a power level in order to beat Jaws that quicker. So yeah, this isn't the only game that was released for based on the Jaws franchise. There was Jaws the computer game released for the Amiga and the Commodore 64, but I've never even actually seen that game in action, so I couldn't tell you too much about it. Apparently, the title screen track is based on John Williams' famous score from the film, but we didn't hear that because of the total lack of sound coming through. This is actually going to cause a bit of a problem later on, no sound coming through on my portion of the video, but I'll give you a bit of warning before we get to that. Can maybe scroll through to the anything else section. Well, no, that's the end of the walkthrough. That was fun. I did this guide in less than an hour. Anyway, this guide is copyright to loads of blah blah. Not the evil fbgames.com, which is the worst site ever. Rock on. Well, that's just the kind of silly thing you write in a little text walkthrough when you're 12 and just wanting to get something published on the internet without too much effort being put into it. So this game didn't get the greatest reception. Computer Gaming World praised the game, saying the graphics, animation, and gameplay in Jaws are all first rate, which to be honest sounds like a bit of a paid review. Allgame gave the game a rating of 1.5 stars out of possible 5, commenting that the visuals in the game were dull and I had a repetitive side view sequence, which is probably a valid complaint. There's not a lot in terms of the scenery in this game, but for what was probably, let's be honest, a quick kind of cash grab, as the fourth film was being made, it was a very common thing in the sort of late 80s and early 90s to get game versions released to coincide with a movie coming out, or you saw the same thing with Toy Story, The Lion King, Aladdin. Although maybe that's a bit unfair on those games. Those, although they were from a later generation of consoles, are probably some of the better movie-based games that came out for the 16-bit era games. The 8-bit era here, it was a bit more of a cash grab, with people just desperate to get to the end. And it doesn't look like it's actually displaying the bottom of the walkthrough here, so I'm just going to have to scroll up a bit. Not that there's much more to see from the end. So, yep, just farming shells. You'll see farming my shells, farming my shells. Getting another bonus scene here. Those mini sharks always give that extra shell, which is good because as you can see, it's a bit random from the jellyfishes and the. I presume they're meant to be manta rays that I'm also shooting at. So you can beat Jaws anywhere from about power level 3 or 4. I think it's possible. I think the speedrunner does it at power level 3. But obviously, the higher your power level, the faster the actual whittling down of the health bar will go. So, yep, Jaws, obviously a classic. It was based on a book, actually. Not a lot of people probably know that. It was a book by an author called Peter Benchley. And it's actually one of these cases where, in my opinion, and from what I've read, sort of fairly widespread opinion too, one of those cases where the book is worse than the film. The film just cuts out a lot of fluff. There's like a Hooper, the character with the glasses, the rich shark investigator. He has an affair with Chief Brody's wife. There's a whole subplot with the mayor of the town having connections with the mafia, which explains why he wants to keep the beach open despite the shark attack, because it's going to cost Amity Island a lot of money. But they kind of just cut out all that fluff for the film and focused on really the terror that the town experienced and the actual hunt for the shark itself, which if I remember makes up like the second half of the film or something crazy like that. Just about to get my 50th shell here, just need another one to drop after this, and I should see another little achievement pop up. It's actually pretty cool. The thing about some of the retro achievements is a lot of them are just outlandishly difficult or just very hard to do, whereas with the Jaws one, all of them are fairly achievable. The hardest one by far is probably the hitting every jellyfish in a bonus stage one. I really don't know how that's possible to get off all 25 hits. That would take some doing, but most of the rest of the achievements of this game are basically just reach a certain power level. There is one that's particularly grindy. You have to get 200,000 points before you kill Jaws, and you also have to kill Jaws without losing a life at all, which are not the easiest things to do compared to collecting all these shells, but certainly not difficult. These maps could be a bit difficult themselves because it's kind of like a shallow water you're in. You obviously have less space to maneuver with these jellyfish. So these segments when you're trying to take down Jaws, not ideal. Just probably a good idea to stay at the top of the water, and that way you get the most time to dodge from the jellyfish. Because it can get a bit risky, especially when they drop down to the bottom of the ocean. If you try and move in, your main risk, I suppose, comes from the jellyfish floating up, who can just randomly appear right next to you and do you some harm. But yeah, the Jaws film, I don't know about the game itself, which I imagine was kind of produced fairly quickly, but the first Jaws film known for being a bit of a turbulent production. It was Spielberg's idea to go out on the open ocean and film there rather than using a water tank or so on. And the famous kind of there's been podcasts and kind of DVD extras about how much of a trouble that was and how the salt water of the open ocean interfered with the model shark, which is one of the things that caused them to have to rely more on that sort of suspension and not showing and keeping the monster hidden, simply because they couldn't really do it in the conditions they set out to do. The film itself actually went over budget and over production time, but I'm sure in the end it was all worth it, given that the budget was $9 million and the ending box office take was 476.5 million. So Jaws was obviously one of the first sort of massive summer blockbusters. It came out in June 1975, just at the height of summer, and I can only imagine what the kind of hype would have been at that time compared to sort of these days, where there's just something new to get hyped about every day, it seems. But yeah, the Richard D. Zanuck and David Brown, producers at Universal Pictures, independently heard about Peter Benchley's novel Jaws, and they thought it might make a good movie. And they both agreed it was the most exciting thing they've ever read, which is funny because the novel's a bit dull. I have read that myself. And they wanted to produce a film version, although they were unsure how it would be accomplished. They purchased the film rights in '73 before the book's publication for approximately $175,000, which is equivalent to just over $1,150,000 in today's money. And Brown claimed that had they read the book twice, they would never have made the film because they would have realised how difficult it would be to execute certain sequences. I actually remember around, well, it must have been the year 1995, the 20th year anniversary of Jaws. I still remember the local Tesco shop having sort of little pop-up cardboard cutout displays and opportunities to buy the VHS. Obviously, DVDs were still not quite a decade away at that point, but the better half of a decade certainly. I think it was 1999 really when DVDs started to really take off. So maybe not. Well, really started to come out, I should say. They didn't really take off until the PlayStation 2 became like the ubiquitous console for people, where it wasn't known as just a gaming machine, but also a DVD machine too. These little sequences where you start off in your boat against Jaws, they're a nice chance to shoot a lot of cannonballs, which I presume do extra damage to him. But they do seem a bit kind of pointless, because as soon as Jaws, what's the word, swims under you, that's you done. So not only do you lose half your half your shells when you die, but you also lose half your power level, which is less than ideal. You can see Jaws' power gets maxed out to the top as well. Don't think I've got enough shells to even upgrade my power level back up to 7, but I almost instantly run into another Jaws fight. Thankfully, it's on a bit more of an open ocean point. I didn't even notice if like the open ocean side-to-side segment here tallies up with hitting him in the open ocean, and the beach shallower waters tallies up, but that would actually be quite a nice little tie-in. I didn't even realise there until just to watching back this video. So I think this might be the final fight with Jaws here, and it's time to make a little bit of a confession. There's maybe something like 2 and 3 minutes left in the video, so yeah, it seems about right. I got right to the end and just mucked up my final button push, actually trying to finish the game. So I actually have to admit that I cheated a little bit and went onto YouTube to find a video of the ending, and I'll just to do this properly, I'll credit fully the YouTube channel I got it off of. It was off a channel called Artificial Raven. He's got a 15-year-old video, which was literally just the sort of end sequence with Jaws and the actual final ending, for lack of a better word. And I'll just admit that I spliced in the video from his 15-year-old YouTube upload, rather than having to sit through another sequence like this. So this must just be the final segment where I'll whittle Jaws down. And once you deplete Jaws' health to 0, you get the chance for the... Oh no, there must have been one last segment before that. I've hit Jaws again. You do get one final chance to... well, 3 chances really, to replicate the final scene of the movie, where they drive the bow of the ship into Jaws' I'm going to use the word thorax, even though I don't know if that can apply to cartilaginous fish like a shark. But you can see now you can get up to power level 9, but you can already see at power level 6 here how much quicker you can whittle down Jaws' health bar. You can sort of get 2-3 bars off with each pass that he makes. And I would warn you now to turn down your speakers if you don't have them, because unfortunately the audio for the video I had to splice in is going to be considerably louder than the game audio. So since you're not really hearing anything from my playthrough here, it might be a good idea just to turn down your speakers just a tad for this upcoming section. So for this little bit here, I kind of lost track of the fact that you're meant to sort of pivot and aim towards him. You want to use your strobe, which makes Jaws jump out of the water, and you want to do this just as at the very bottom of the screen, and then you hit your button again, which will stab the bow forward. You can see I've spliced in the ending from the video. Courtesy of, what was his name? Oh, I've already lost it. But yeah, it's basically, he did it right there and hit him the right way, and then the plane flies off into the sunset. And that's Jaws the game. A nice little fun one that I enjoyed playing through some 20, 23, 24 years ago, just to write a little walkthrough again. And that's been a nice little video just to fire in one from my YouTube. So thanks for watching Jaws the video game. Never. It's okay.